everyone, I'm Sam. I'm the head of creative at BaxterStorey, and I'm going to be your host for our panel discussion about menopause in the workplace and how we can support through mental health support and also help our peers and family members and everyone we know who goes through the menopause. We have amazing guests with us. We have Lyndsey Oliver, who is our head of equity, diversity and inclusion at BaxterStorey. Lyndsey will be sharing her insights on creating inclusive environments and support for menopause in the workplace. We also have Melissa Tomsett, Head of Development at Kelly's Calls, a charity that provides mental health first aid training and support in the hospitality industry. And last but not least, we have Lizzie Foskett from BaxterStorey. She's our head of nutrition, and Lizzie will be telling us about how nutrition can help manage menopause symptoms and how workplaces can integrate nutrition into their food services. Now, before we begin, we just want to acknowledge that while we may use the term women throughout this conversation, we appreciate that all genders can go through the menopause, and we just want to make sure that we keep this conversation inclusive and, as sensitive as possible to everyone going through the menopause. So, Lyndsey, I'd like to start with you and menopause in the workplace. Hundreds of thousands of people each year go through the menopause in the UK, probably millions. And an interesting stat that I found that was over 1 million people in the UK have either left or thought about leaving their job due to the lack of support for menopause. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how do you think workplaces handle menopause and what do you think the biggest gaps are?
So I would say it varies from provision of absolutely nothing to some organisations that do quite a lot, and there's everything that's in between. If I think about our approach at BaxterStorey, we're trying to take a holistic approach to what we're doing. It's really important that you've got policies, and it's not just about having a menopause policy, it's about how does that interact with things like flexible working and things like that. Also your sickness and absence policy, it's about making sure that it's cohesive and whole. There's a bit about how do we make sure that we raise awareness, how do we make sure that people understand a little bit more. We've trained a whole pile of menopause champions in BaxterStorey. That was this year, and they're off rolling out a couple of courses, one of which is around people experiencing menopause, and then the other one is around people supporting people experiencing menopause, because one of the things we really want to do is to normalise the conversation. The other bit is about workplace adjustments, or reasonable adjustments it might be known as, and it's not just the provision of workplace adjustments, it's making sure that if you have anything in your supply chain that you make sure that you can actually provide those adjustments. So one of the things that we've been working on as well is around inclusive uniforms, which is really important. So it's about saying that you can do adjustments, but also making sure that it's easy to do. The other one is ERG, so employee resource groups. RISE is obviously here today, which is our Women in Hospitality, but actually it's supported by another ERG, which is our Ways of Wellbeing. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we have an intersectional approach to how we look at things around wellbeing, because as you alluded to, it's not just women that experience menopause. People of all sorts of gender identities experience it too. So for me, it's kind of like this holistic piece. And then the other bit is around making sure that your provision around health is also inclusive as well and takes into consideration menopause, plus lots of things as well. But they're the kind of like the big key things.
That's really interesting and leads nicely to my next question around the misconceptions about menopause in the workplace and menopause in general. And I feel like this is a really loaded question.
It is. So the biggest one that we've alluded to, it's not just women. A lot of people think it is just women, and it's not. The fact that there are so many symptoms at the moment, I think it's like over 30 symptoms of menopause, but a lot of people think it's just about hot flushes and brain fog. There's so many, point to myself, there's a new one every week. It's like symptom bingo, to be honest. The other bit is that HRT is the only solution. That's not true. There's lots of different ways that you can actually manage menopause. One of the other myths is that it's personal and it shouldn't be spoken about in the workplace. I absolutely think that we need to normalise those conversations, that there's no long-term impact. There are long-term impacts from a health point of view, that it's women of a certain age or people of a certain age. Again, not true. The average age is 51, but that's really based on kind of a white cis woman's experience of it. And there's medically induced menopause. There's all sorts of different things. And I think we just have to be really supportive. And then if I think about BaxterStorey, if I think about people's partners who come in and don't necessarily know what's going on, because you don't necessarily know that you're at the point of perimenopause when you actually get it. You might just think, you might be Googling early onset dementia, to be honest, because it is quite scary when you start to think about some of these things. And so even to make it okay for partners to come and have a conversation, we've got mental health first aiders, you know, it's really around that whole cohesive piece and the whole cohesive approach that then makes, hopefully, it okay to talk about something like that. And if we can talk about menopause, it means we can talk about anything, because we all have human beings in our workplace and we all experience so much.
Do you find that menopause fits under the ED&I sort of strategy for a business, or do you think it should be sitting somewhere else? How do you think that works?
I think it sits under everything. If you've talked to me in BaxterStorey, I'm trying to make my own job redundant, by the way, because I don't believe we should have ED&I as a role. Ideally, you've got it integrated across the entire business, across kind of leadership, management, you've got your policies in place, you've got your provisions in place. And so hopefully you won't need a me in the future. So as much as it kind of comes into HR, I think it just comes into everything, because if you are a kitchen porter or a chef in one of our businesses, it doesn't necessarily fall into a clear-cut box. And so we just have to kind of like treat people as human beings and make sure that people know what's available, how to handle it. If you don't feel comfortable handling it, there are so many different kind of like mechanisms for support, and it's directing people in the right direction.
And menopause has been known to impact your work performance potentially.
Yep.
And how do you find that businesses are supporting those who are going through the menopause?
I think it varies. There definitely is a recognition that it has an impact. And I think what we need to make sure is that people feel supported, for one thing, and also that people don't leave. If we think about representation and leadership representation, and if we think about Gemma, who's saying, you know, we want to get more female chefs into the business, and there aren't enough of them, and we need to make sure that they stay in the business and don't leave. Same for leaders. We need to make sure that they stay in the business. If people leave because we're not supporting them, actually that has an impact on us as a wider business. If you don't have representation, if you're not a diverse and inclusive organisation, we know that there is a massive impact on organisations as a consequence. So the more that we can do to keep people in and to support them in something that is a part of their life, you know, there is potentially an end point to some of this stuff. How do we make sure that we keep them in? Because it's really important that people stay in the workplace and feel supported.
And how do we keep them in? What would be your recommendation?
I think it's all about the provision. Yeah. And I think it's about normalising conversation about anything, whether it's mental health, which I know we'll be talking about, whether it's around kind of like challenges caring for older parents, whether it's around anxiety, whatever it is. I think if we can be an inclusive culture that allows for those conversations to happen, for workplace adjustments to just be part of the norm, it does, because some of them are temporary, some of them are with you forever. I think the more that we do that, the more inclusive we are, the more diverse we are, because it means that people stay in, we attract more people in, and there is psychological safety in our teams, so that people feel as if they've got a sense of belonging. And the sense of belonging is what keeps people.
Yeah.
You don't actually necessarily have to be the highest payer for a role. If you've got great benefits, if you've got a great culture, then actually people will sacrifice money to a certain extent, not always, for that, because they will feel valued.
Thank you, Lyndsey. I wanted to talk about mental health and physical well-being and how Kelly's Cause comes into that. So approximately 50% of people who go through the menopause suffer with some sort of mental health challenge, such as anxiety, depression, brain fog, like what Lyndsey mentioned, but this often gets unrecognised in the workplace. So Mel, could you tell us a bit more about Kelly's Cause and how charities like it helps employers recognise mental health challenges associated with the menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually think Lyndsey covered quite a lot that I was going to say there.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. No, but it's fantastic because it's, you know, it's exactly the message that we need to get across, that we do need to be talking about it. And if we don't know something about a topic, then we need to educate ourselves on it and not be afraid to say that we need education on that. And maybe that's where the sticking point is. People aren't afraid to say, I don't actually know very much about this. Please tell me. But anyway, Kelly's Cause. So we are as you said, a mental health first aid charity. We provide mental health first aid within the hospitality business. We were founded a few years ago now, and we were founded in honour of Kelly. Now, Kelly and our founder, Tobiana, worked together. They trained at the Cordon Bleu, and once they started working in the hospitality arena, shall we say, Kelly found that her mental health condition that she had, which was pre-existing, became very difficult to manage. And as a result of the working conditions within hospitality, she very sadly took her own life. Now, for those of you working in hospitality, you know there's long hours, you don't necessarily get a lot of sleep. Perhaps you're taking medication and that has side effects that impact the work that you're doing. And all of this sadly led to her taking her own life. Now, Tobiana, who was head chef at Cricket at the time, said, well, this is ridiculous. We can't possibly continue like this as an industry, not recognizing the impact that it has on people's mental health. It is a high pressured environment. There are many, many different factors that influence people's mental health, whether they're in hospitality or not, but she decided to do something about it. So she trained as a mental health first aid trainer and started delivering mental health first aid for free at that point around London. And we've slightly changed what we do as a charity now. So now we have members as well as offering training. And since our inception, we have trained over 2,000 mental health first aiders within hospitality across 266 businesses. And that's really just the start. We're a small team, we're only 4 people. And so we would love to grow and get bigger, but the key message for us is that we want to do what we do and we want to do it right. And I think that is also the key message when it comes to menopause. We have to make sure that whatever information we're providing businesses with, it has to be correct, it has to be knowledgeable, and it needs to be accessible as well, accessible to people who are living with people who are going through menopause. And I know there's a few people in the room today who are here to pick up on tips for that, how they can cope in their home life as well as at work. But also it's really just about having those conversations. Our cause with Kelly's cause is to reduce the stigma, is to talk openly about mental health and to make it unintimidating to be able to bring these things up within the workplace, and for the employer to listen and make the necessary reasonable adjustments. And it's really exactly the same for menopause. We need to remain open, have an empathetic mindset when it comes to welcoming people who are experiencing menopause, and supporting them and really listening to what they need and making those reasonable adjustments as required.
Oh, no, that's well said. Is there anything specifically that employers can do? It's types of training that you would recommend?
Well, I think that I'm correct in saying that you've been doing some training for both people experiencing menopause as well as people who are supporting people experiencing menopause. And so I think, again, it's just really about that education. I think mental health first aid training will help as well, because the symptoms that can be experienced that are related to mental health, such as anxiety, brain fog, the mood swings that they experience, panic attacks sometimes come into menopause as well, which can be something new that people haven't experienced before, as well as the normal everyday anxieties that you get, perhaps about going into a meeting. You know, is the room going to be too hot? Am I going to be able to get out of that room if I need to? And that in itself can weigh on, well, anybody's mind, but particularly if it's out of your control due to hormone imbalances. If you know that your manager next to you understands that you may need to leave the room, or understands that you would like to know the agenda and perhaps you could go first so that you don't need to be sat there worrying and thinking about the temperature. Not that that's the only thing, of course, but it's just a really good example of small things that employers can do. Is really just be mindful and of the situation that they're putting their employer in.
Agreed. And I suppose this is repeating the question, but what else can senior leaders do to create or foster an inclusive environment for the menopause?
I don't think it's necessarily repeating the question, because we've seen with mental health policies that we've implemented in businesses, the most successful ones come when the leadership are championing, you know what I'm trying to say. When they are leading, they're leading on that topic. Okay, perhaps they're even being vulnerable and sharing their own experience of that topic, so that actually the people that they're reporting into them they can see, okay, this person understands and really can see what I'm going through, and they're more likely to talk about it. So I think the key message for leaders is, don't be afraid to educate yourself. Also, don't be afraid to say if you don't know something, because I think in leadership positions, often you feel like you have to know all of the answers. You don't, particularly if this is not your area of expertise and you're not going through it. And really just get behind the teams that are experts. So, you know, if Lyndsey is in a business promoting it and you're a leader and don't know much about it, just get behind Lyndsey and support what they're doing. And really, that's what it comes down to for leaders. I think we have to embrace it.
Yes, definitely. Just ask questions and be curious, for sure.
Yeah.
And do you have any tips for people who may be going through the menopause, how they can help manage their mental health symptoms at home?
Yes, again, very similar to mental health. We have a very simple anagram that we use called SWEEP, which is making sure you get enough sleep, making sure your water intake is good, eating correctly, and I know that Lizzie will come on to that, exercise where you can, and that might not be going to the gym, that might be just, you know, taking a walk, a 5-minute walk at lunchtime or something, so getting out. Breathing, so thinking about your breathing exercises. And the final S is seek support if you need it. So shout out and seek support. And that support could come in any form. It could be perhaps you need to go down the therapy route if you feel that is necessary, but also it could be finding mindfulness, depending on how you feel about that word, I'm sorry, but thinking about, meditation, and employers could look at maybe providing meditation apps. Also thinking about yoga, perhaps, because you can really find yourself relaxing very well. I know my mum really benefited from going to yoga in a way that she thought she would never do, but she definitely enjoyed that through menopause. And really just seeking that support. So thinking about sweeps, and doing that upon your own bat, really. And we often forget to hydrate ourselves all the time. So
yes,
if in doubt,
so
drink a glass of water.
Lizzie, I'm sure you want to talk about hydration as well. And is there anything else you want to add about Kelly's course that you might not have touched on?
Oh, you put me on the spot now, because I do have my notes here, which I'm not afraid to say that I have my notes here. No, I think there was one little tip that I perhaps wanted to suggest as something, because as people who are experiencing menopause sometimes find it difficult to concentrate. I know that I certainly, in a stimulating environment, I find myself, there's too much noise going on. So if we can make sure that we're regulating the temperatures in these rooms, as well as creating a quiet environment. And if you can't create a quiet environment, perhaps providing earplugs for those people. It's just a really simple thing that could help, or a nice pair of headphones could be nice. And that just really shows your support, that you recognise that that person needs a little bit of quiet to be able to concentrate properly.
Yeah. And I suppose, working from home as well, that may have its benefits, but it may have its challenges as well, depending on the environment and the situation.
Yeah, working from home, I think, and also, looking at other policies in terms of flexi time. So if somebody's not sleeping correctly, knowing that they don't have to get up and be in the office for 5 to 9, that they could have that flexibility to come in a bit later would be nice. Or if we have a traffic light system in some of the businesses that we've worked with for mental health, where they have a green, yellow or red light. And if they're having a really low day, they can call their employer and say, I'm having an amber day. And that person, that their boss knows, okay, we will not put you in a new situation that day, make sure that you're comfortable. And if somebody has a red day, no questions asked, they just say, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And that's them called in sick for the day, basically. And there's no questions asked, you just accept. And it's based on trust. But perhaps you could look at implementing something like that as well, where there's no explanation sort of needed if the circumstances are extreme.
That's a really good tip.
Yep.
I like that tip. Thank you. I want to move on to nutrition, and Lizzie, I can see you're excited to talk about nutrition now. And while we know that medication can help manage menopause symptoms, we appreciate that diet and nutrition is it can be one of the best ways to support. So would you mind just telling us a little bit about how nutrition can help support with symptoms like hot flushes, brain fog?
Absolutely. So I wanted to start with a positive, that diet and nutrition absolutely can help with menopause. And it's probably one of the first places that I would recommend that people go to before they look for other ways to help it. I suppose if we sort of put it down into a whole sort of approach, going for a really wholesome, reducing your ultra processed foods, reducing your salt intake, reducing your fat intake, sticking to those whole foods and trying to cook from scratch really will help. I know that is a very sweeping statement, so you probably need to sort of chop it down into bits. When it comes to fatigue and something, you want to look at getting your B vitamins, getting your iron in there. And again, that comes from stuff like your green leafy veg. And I think for like an audience we've got today, you want to give those little tips. So for me, look, whole foods, lots of veg in there, hot flushes, all down to the estrogen levels dropping. So you want to look at getting your stuff like your phytoestrogens back in there. Lots of research coming out, but we can't say definitely that soy foods are going to help, but soy foods definitely have been seen to help. But also, again, back to the green leafy veg, they are also full of your phytoestrogens and your phytochemicals that are going to really help with hot flushes. What was your other one?
What about weight gain? That's actually
Weight gain. So yeah, that is a big topic. And what they say, and again, menopause is a very newly researched topic. It's still being looked into. Weight gain isn't directly related to menopause, but unfortunately, with the lack of sleep that often women suffer from, the hot flushes, the mood, weight gain comes with that. But if you look at really supporting your gut health, eating that whole food diet, you can maintain the weight gain. But again, naturally, where our estrogen drops, a lot of women do find that, and especially then sitting around the middle, which is just something we need to watch. So yes, weight gain does come with it, but I think with a really whole food diet, looking at the exercise, looking at keeping that mood up with other things is really going to help the weight gain. But positively, there was a study done recently that said 38% of women saw a real decline in symptoms from keeping that diet wholesome, doing the exercise, keeping hydrated, and where work were helping them, they really saw a decrease in their symptoms.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Also, obviously, people going through the menopause will need nutritional support, but post-menopause, studies have been showing that with the decrease in estrogen, it means that there's going to be potential problems such as heart health and bone health. Would you mind touching on that and explaining that a little bit more?
So you're definitely right. There definitely is again, estrogen levels drop, and we do get an increased risk of heart disease, bone problems. But swing it into a positive again, you can help. So if you're looking at the stuff like the whole foods where you're getting your phytoestrogens, that acts as an estrogen and attacks the receptors and can help stop that decline in bone health and heart health. When it comes to heart health, you want to look at getting your stuff like your vitamin D and your calcium in there. Also really helps with bone health at the same time. So it sounds like there's a lot of things that are repeating themselves, but naturally, if you're helping your bone health, it helps your heart health as well. Also things like your calcium and your zinc, you want to get in there. Again, coming from green leafy veg, lots of beans. People laugh that I'm always mentioning the beans, but they are great for a lot of people. They help keep your bones strong, help reduce the risk of osteoporosis, and can also really help with heart problems. One other probably thing to put in there as well is estrogen helps keep your bad cholesterol low. So when those estrogen levels start to drop, unfortunately, the bad cholesterol creeps up a little bit. So it's just looking at reducing fat and reducing salt to help with that cholesterol.
Okay.
I feel like as well, when it comes to the nutrition, it's a lot of information at once. There's lots of research out there, but it's still a very new topic. So I would say as well, when you're looking on Instagram, just make sure you're going for those credited sources, because there's a lot of also myths that come with it.
You've said lots of big words and lots of vitamins there. If I'm thinking practically, okay, I'm going to the supermarket, I want to buy something, and I'm like, what has phytoestrogens in it? What, so soy, is there?
Yeah, so soy products.
So, yeah, like
beans.
Tofu
has soy in. Lots of plants have your phytochemicals in there.
Yeah.
Another one to point out, and I know there's lots of big words that come out, but serotonin's our happy hormone. We make sort of 95% of that in the gut. Unfortunately, again, estrogen drops, production of serotonin drops a bit. But if you eat more tryptophan containing foods, which is your meat, your beans, your veg, that can help you produce more serotonin, which keeps that gut happy and in turn keeps the brain happy. But I like what you said there, keeping it basic. Go to the supermarket, buy your whole foods, buy your soy containing foods, aim for your 30 plants, move a lot, stay hydrated are like my top 4 tips.
That's good to know.
Do you have 5 items that we can add to our shopping list? Sorry.
Okay, beans.
Okay.
Beans, always beans.
Baked beans?
Any butter beans, kidney beans.
Right, okay.
At the moment, your Cavolo Nero, something like that, broccoli, water. You can get that from the tap though, but we'll put that in there. Lean meat if you are a meat eater, and your soy containing products in there. So that again is your beans, some of your whole grains. Yeah, let's put some whole grains in there. That's quite broad, but
Estrogen's got a lot to answer for, isn't it?
Yeah.
That feels doable.
Estrogen has a lot to answer for, but luckily we can support it a little bit. And the one, I'm not really into supplements, but one supplement they are saying may help women now is isoflavones. which contains a phytoestrogen in there. So again, acts like that estrogen. And it's not as strong as estrogen, but if you take it for sort of 12 weeks or more, you should start to see the benefits of it.
And where can you get that? Is that something that's prescribed, or is that
You can get that as from a Holland and Barrett or whatever. Make sure you're getting, again, look up the source you're getting, and it might be worth speaking to your doctor before, and especially if you're on HRT or something already.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you, Lizzie. I feel like
I know.
I'm learning a lot.
You need to take Lizzie to the supermarket with you, don't you? As well as personal chef.
So we've touched on the workplace and obviously nutrition, but how can workplaces be better at incorporating all of this knowledge into their nutritional food offering?
Okay, well, I'm going to speak on behalf of BaxterStorey for this. So we are doing a lot at the moment in terms of menopause champions. All the work we're doing under our sustainable nutrition movement is a real holistic approach to nutrition. And within that, we want to make sure we're catering for everyone in our workplace, whether it be our teams, our customers. So with the approach of what we're having on our counters, there would be something for those women to go and choose there and pick from what I've just said there. And in 2025, what we really want to be able to do is communicate to the customers about what's in that food, so that that person that might be suffering from it can go and pick and hopefully help them fuel for the day, and for, you know, help them with their long-term benefits. And I just think the work that Lyndsey's doing, the work that we're all doing coming together. When I was saying to someone earlier, when my mum was going through menopause, we never spoke about it. We were having
that was
My mum told me she never had it. Like, you did.
But I just think, yeah, the work that everyone's doing and having the champions being able to talk about it, I would love to be able to help people that want a further chat. I'll limit the big words and make it, you know, easy to do. But yeah, just talking about it and helping each other.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Lizzie. Is there anything else you want to add about nutrition that we've not touched? Anything itching to come out?
Yeah, I would say it's a really, really newly researched topic. So they're not saying anything is for definite at the moment. They are saying that diet absolutely can help it. And there are nutritionists that now just specialise in nutrition. So if you want that one-on-one, real deep conversation with someone, there are people that just do that day in, day out. Laura Wyness, who we did some work with last year, she's excellent. She's based in Scotland, and 24/7 she's just researching menopause. So they're really constantly looking into what we can do. And
she actually has a cookbook that's available. And I think there's quite a lot of recipes in there as well. So yeah, please, if you are going through the menopause and you would like some nice recipes, they're all in there. And it's a bit more in detail about all of the different foods and ingredients you can buy that help with different problems as well.
I think, sorry, one quick thing as well, you mentioned it, exercise, and it doesn't have to be going to the gym or going on a run, just walking where you can, because that helps so many things.
Yeah, and water.
And water.
And lots of water.
Lots of water.
Keep hydrated. Okay, thank you, Lizzie. I think we've touched on the workplace, nutrition, but we've not really, and mental health, but we've not really touched on support from peers and colleagues and friends and family members. And obviously this is really important to support someone who's going through the menopause and just be there so they can open up to you. So I suppose my question is, why is it important that so many people are talking about the menopause, regardless of your age, your gender, and any other barriers that may stop you from wanting to talk about menopause?
So for me, I just think it impacts so many people. Like, if you look at how many people experience menopause, why isn't there the research? It's been going on forever. But it's one of those subjects that if you start talking about periods and bladders and hot flushes and weight gain and lack of sleep, lack of sex drive, like, they're not necessarily the best subjects to just be kind of like chatting with your peer over. However, it is really important. You don't necessarily have to go into all of your symptoms, but even just sharing some of that stuff I think is really important. And if I take it from a personal point of view, because I do this job, my poor husband gets to experience everything as well, in terms of I tell him all sorts of stuff. But I track my period, just too much information, sorry. I track my periods through Clue. I have day 21. I'm an absolute bloody nightmare, excuse my language. And it catches us by surprise every single month. It shouldn't, because it happens every month. And so he's now got Clue on his phone, and he's put in day 21 warning, where he's really nice to me. I might actually add in a few more days during the month, just so that he's really, really nice to me, maybe on day 18 or day 24 or something like that. But it's really important because I'm less of myself, and I don't necessarily think in the same way, and certain things annoy me and they can take it personally, and that's not okay. So I just think it's really useful to talk about it. I've even told my boss Aaron that day 21's not great, but I just think it's useful to share some of these things, because the more we talk about it, the more we normalise it. We're all human beings working in a workplace, and there's so many different things that impact us that are all part of normal life. And menopause is part of normal life. So I just think it's useful, and it's actually not that embarrassing really when you start talking about it, because it's just about getting the support that you need. And I think if you take your overall career, there's so many different, it's not linear in terms of the support that you need. As when you come into the workplace, there's so many different things that happen in life where you need different support at different phases of your life. And if we can get better at talking about all of that, then I just think it just helps really.
Have you got any examples of support that you've offered, or support that you've sort of seen maybe around, and then an advice for the audience as well on how you can use that?
Yeah, definitely. I help a couple of people one-on-one from sort of friendship basis, and a couple of my mum's friends, and they have really found that diet and tips have helped them, and they were about to go for HRT, and at the moment they haven't. So I know that was a very quick overview of diet and what you can do, but I would say if you take those tips away and try them, you can see a big reduction in symptoms. Obviously it's a very personal journey, but I think, like you said, Lyndsey, there's about 30 to 50 symptoms now, so it's different for everyone. But try things that work for you. It's going to work for some people, it's not going to work for others, and then speak about what's helping you and share it.
So I take a magic medicine also twice a day. It's a homeopathic remedy. It's called magic medicine, and a shot in the morning, a shot in the evening. And I don't know what the herbalist puts in it. It's all legal, but it's been amazing. It has been amazing.
And where'd you get that?
Just from a qualified homeopathist, if that's the proper word. Yeah. And and it's just all herbal remedies which do so much to help.
What about like family members? I know, Lizzie, we spoke about when our parents were going through it. It was just like a taboo. Didn't even know they were going through it. If we knew what we know now, maybe we could have actually been able to offer some support.
No, I think that's a massive thing. And like when we spoke about it, I literally just did think, wow, Mum, you're being really weird today, or like for a few days. It was never spoken about. And when I saw her at the weekend, I said, oh, we're doing this panel, we're talking about it. And she, it was never ever spoken about. And if we did speak about it a bit more, spoke about the tips that everyone's hearing, it would just be such a nicer time for the person going through it, and everyone else around them could help. So I think the biggest thing that I want, we're all doing it, and to spread, is just for people to be more aware. And just talk, and it's just like I said, it's still so new in the research area. There's going to be so much more coming out on it.
I think it's really important. I mean, I've got 2 kids as well, and I don't want them to think that I'm upset with them. I'm not. Stuff is going on for me, and they know if it's day 21 as well to be nice to me. But yeah, you don't want them to take it personally and just get upset about it.
Yeah. When
actually, if you can just share, just give me 5 extra minutes today, kids. It's quite useful.
Yeah, and I think just on that note, if at work perhaps somebody is reacting in a way that doesn't feel like their normal self, I think it's okay to say, take a minute, are you okay? And then yes, I'm fine. No, really, are you okay? What can I do? Can I get you a glass of water? Do you need some time? And just being really empathetic with that person, and allowing that space for them to reflect and say, okay, yeah, actually, maybe I do need a moment to myself. And that works in any situation, even 5-year-olds, which is what I'm going through at the moment.
It's not just menopause, just people in general. Allow them that space if you see that they need that. So we're coming towards the end. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I think people learn enough about me, haven't they?
Day 21, stay away.
Day 21. When you schedule a meeting with me, Sam, just ask.
No, I think I've said everything that.
Right. Well,
unless there's questions.
Yes, we're going to take it to the audience. Do you have any questions for our panelists?
Good question. Unfortunately, it's not just the blue tick, because there's many ways to get the blue tick now. I would look to see what accreditation they have, and with that you can then look up to see if that's then accredited by an external. So they will have on their BSc or AFN, or they'll have something on there. That's often a good sign. Give them a Google to see who they've been accredited by, and then that's a pretty good way to see, and if they are or not. Again, it's still quite a dodgy area, but that is normally a good starting point. And also, I always think if that person's saying something, have a look on someone else's account. Is there a lot of research going at the same time? And then see if that research has been credited by a scientist or something.
Do you have any influencers in mind that you would recommend if someone was to get that information on social media?
Yeah,
Sorry to put you on the spot if you don't.
I would say at the moment, Rihanna Lambert's really high up in in the area. There's Em, the nutritionist, so I should say she's doing good things. And then there's Dr. Emily Leeming. And then Zoe are actually doing some really good studies at the moment with big audiences. So I think the four of them at the moment, if you look, they're all saying very similar things.
Any other questions?
Could you tell us a bit more about the menopause champions at BaxterStorey and what that actually means? Because I think, yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about like what that role actually involves and whether we can do the same at ASOS.
Yeah, so last year we introduced Henpicked into the organisation, which is a company that specialises in menopause support and resources. So we've rolled that out. As part of that, they have trained up a group of people within our organisation, not just people experiencing menopause, but you're sat next to someone who's one of our menopause champions, so people supporting people as well, which I think is super important. It should be that we normalise it. They've given a basic training. We've also pulled in some of our insights that we have from our L&D team as well, and we've got mental health first aiders as well. So it's a bit of a combination approach. So you get access to their resources. We've also done some videos where people have shared some of their lived experience, and that's all part of the training. And those trainers, some of which are in the audience today, have also trained other trainers as well. So the idea is that trainers train trainers. And at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's monthly webinars, and BaxterStorey is part of WSH. It's across all of WSH as well. So we do monthly webinars, one for people experiencing menopause, one for people supporting people experiencing menopause. And part of that as well is also just around creating a safe space for people to have conversations, and we kind of do a virtual coffee afterwards. And yeah, if I've forgotten anything, menopause champions, I apologise, but yeah, that's it. But Henpicked are really good. Henpicked have a lot of resources, and also it means that if anything changes, you have an expert-led set of resources to kind of like feed into your strategy and your plan. Because one of the things that I think is really important is to make sure that you use external partners, because it's very difficult for me. There's one of me in the team. I can't keep up to date with everything across all protected characteristics. So that partnering is really important. And so that's the approach that we've taken. But it's only one, it's kind of like one part of the support, but it's a really important part of the support.
So I don't know whether I've got a question. So I'm 35 and I'm going through menopause because I had ovarian cancer. So I suppose right now I'm trying to find my way through it at my age when none of my friends are. So I suppose one question is there anywhere out there that talks about it from in my age group, you know, instead of it being maybe 50 plus, say? So that's my first question. And then obviously my second question is around supplements. Now, I've got a 3-year-old, you know, I go shopping for my family. I don't necessarily want to be doing different meals and things like that. I don't have the time, but I didn't know if there was any supplements that I could take. I know a lot of people say magnesium is good and others, or if there's any brands that I may be able to look at and research, because HRT obviously isn't something that I can take. So yeah, and I appreciate actually this. It's nice to be able to talk to someone about it.
Okay. Maybe if we can split up between if you do so in terms of help, I think in terms of resources, Henpicked, and there's lots of organisations that are out there, and I think it's really important to dispel some of the myths around it only happens to people who are kind of in their late 40s, early 50s, as you say. I don't know of specific groups, but there absolutely will be. Every time I go into a conversation about menopause, there's people who have the same experience of you, whether it's kind of having to have a kind of hysterectomy or whatever at an early age. There definitely are people and groups. If you go to Henpicked, I'm sure they will point you in the right direction. And the other place is Davina McCall speaks very openly about her menopause journey.
Yeah, I've on her Instagram, so I know that she's done quite a lot of
and a lot of the places that she's linked in with are really good organisations, and I would say they are good places to start.
Okay,
that would be my thought.
And then in terms of supplements, and I'm very happy to have a quick chat afterwards, it definitely depends on what sort of diet you're having anyway. So maybe we have a quick 5 minutes and just go, because you might not need all of them, but my top definitely would be to look at your magnesium. Vitamin D is one that everyone in the room should be taking at the moment, because that sun has gone. Well, it's going.
It's all summer.
But even when it's September through to March, April, we probably all need to look at taking that. And then calcium, you need the vitamin D and calcium together to help you absorb and use the magnesium and calcium properly. They're the ones I'd look at. And then those isoflavones that I spoke about before, you can take those if you don't think you're getting enough soy food. But let's have a quick 5 minutes, because if you've got lots of that in your diet, probably don't need to do all of them.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
For people working in the office, but for us then we are more on the front of the line. We don't really have all this information. So how can we get more involved, or we can get more information involved in some way?
So, I mean, it's definitely one of my challenges, because most of our business do not work in an office in front of a computer. I would say that your line manager is the first point of call. If you're in BaxterStorey, give me a shout. The RISE, the Employee Resource Group, WOW, Ways of Wellbeing, that group as well, who have access to mental health first aiders and menopause champions. For us, it is a challenge in our industry, because people are out and about, to make sure that you can get the information in the right way. It's definitely something that, from a comms point of view, I know the team are working on as well, to make it easier. But if in doubt, contact HR, contact your line manager, reach out to an ERG, I would say, and then we can signpost you in the right direction. In terms of some of the stuff that's coming down the line from BaxterStorey, we've got some new e-learning on protected characteristics that's coming, and there will be signposting as part of that. So as long as you do your e-learning, you will also have clear signposting as part of that. So what we're trying to do is to have different kind of channels and mechanisms so that we can make people aware and raise awareness. So I think, yeah, so if you don't feel safe, or you're embarrassed, which, you know, I don't know what the relationship is like, that's why menopause champions are a great route. There's also, from our point of view, Speak Up, which is a confidential line which is looked at every single day. If you put a question in there to say, I'm experiencing perimenopause, I don't know what support is available, then you will get all sorts of information sent to you that way. So that's why we're trying to have a different combination and a different approach. And I would say the training sessions as well that the menopause champions are running, that again is a really great environment to go on the court. And this is about kind of getting the message out there and people knowing that actually there is quite a lot available, and we need to make sure it gets into your hands. And all right.
Thank you, Lizzie, Melissa and Lyndsey, and thank you all for joining us.